We're here today with Lynbrook Village historian Art Mattson at the Lynbrook Public Library. He's taken out some of the items that live in the library's archives to talk to us a little bit about the history of Lynbrook.
Here with Alina Volk from Lynbrook TV.
Can you tell me about the iron rail and the peg?
Sure. And there's a field of archaeology that's called recovery archaeology. And that is that when something's being destroyed, or perhaps it's just a road being put through somewhere, and it turns out that the excavator sees that there's a bone, a human bone. Well, it could be a cemetery, could have been there. Well, you stop the project and you do something to try to preserve what was found. This happened, for example, in London when they were digging a parking lot and actually uncovered the tomb of Richard III, sorry. In this case, on Stoneman Avenue, I remember when I first moved to Lynbrook, I could see once in a while the paving would be worn away and you could see an iron rail running through there. Well, that rail was truly what you see here, which is from the trolley that ran through Lynbrook. So before I get to that, I should mention that the person who did the recovery archaeology here was Louise Janet Campbell, longtime resident of the Lynbrook and someone very historically aware. She saw they were tearing up the roadbed to repave it, and she knew that the trolley had run there and that the tracks were there, and saw them about to move the tracks away to be melted down, sold, and melted down for the iron that's in this. And so she asked, please, as long as you got your torch out, could you cut a section out for me? Wow. Thank goodness she did that, or I would not have this, and I would not be able to tell you, boy, let me tell you, this is heavy. Oh yeah, this is easily 20 pounds. And the spike she also got as well. So, what about the trolley? The trolley ran through Lynbrook from 1904 or 1906, I don't quite remember, and it ran till about 1924. So what's a trolley doing in Lynbrook? Well, the trolley actually ran somewhat parallel to the Long Island Railroad, but not completely. It ran between Jamaica and Freeport, with stops along the way at Valley Stream, Lynbrook, Rockville Center, Oceanside, Baldwin, and then on to Freeport. Then from Freeport, it made a giant hook heading up through Roosevelt up to Hempstead. Then from Hempstead, it was a branch that ran all the way up to the North Shore. So you had this big loop, not closed, but fish hook. People would take it because it would run along quite regularly, cost 10 cents a ride, and people just love the trolley. Here in Lynbrook, they called it the Toonerville trolley. And rather than take the Long Island Railroad into Jamaica, it was so much more fun to go through the farm fields of Valley Stream and go to Jamaica that way. Also to get to Hempstead, I guess you could go up Ocean Avenue and Hempstead Avenue and on a horse cart of some sort, a stagecoach. But that's the only way to get there would be by horse or by someone's rickety automobile. The trolley was 10 cents. It would get you there by way of, you'd have to go by way of Freeport, but it was fun to take the ride. Now, what killed the trolley was the bus. Buses came along and made it so cheap and easy and fast to get wherever you wanted to go that it pretty much put the trolleys out of business. This was a trolley with just one car. So that's where this rail came from. And thanks to Louise Janet Campbell for bringing it here so we could talk about this long forgotten means of transportation in Lynbrook.
As they're doing work in their yards or doing excavations or work in their homes, what are things that residents might look out for to know if something's historic or not?
Sure. A resident just near the Driving Park Avenue had a tree fall over in his backyard with a hurricane. And when the tree fell over, the roots lifted up, and down by the roots he found a collection of bottles and cans. Well, the labels, some of the labels were barely legible, but I could make out what it was. There was kind of horseshoe radish. There was ketchup bottles. And there were oyster shells, clam shells. There was hot sauce. And what could that be from? Well, I knew that the racetrack was right there. That was the edge of the racetrack. And so this must have been a stand that was there. And there must have, I'm guessing there was a pit that had been dug by the people operating this oyster stand. And so this was where the debris was tossed when he was feeding the clients that were out there on a 4th of July, maybe in 1896 when the Sunland Joy and Mrs. Schultz won the cup here for best rig. That certainly was what that was. There was so much of this kind of debris there. It wasn't just some guy who had oyster parties in his backyard. So that's one example. Another is right near Davison Avenue School. A fellow was digging a post hole to put for a deck. And when he got down to about 3 feet, he came upon a spherical iron object, which again, I brought that over to a archaeology professor at Delphi, and he identified it as a cannibal. It was all corroded and dirty. It's in a collection somewhere. I don't exactly know where it is. So yes, if you're digging in your backyard, let me know what you come up with. I'll be interested to draw a connection to something.
Thinking of bottles, can you tell us about these bottles that you have here?
Yeah. Okay. This one is from Prudential Farms of Lynbrook, Long Island. Now, I never knew this existed, this place, until I got this bottle. Now, a few of the viewers of this show will remember this kind of a milk bottle. I do, when I was a kid. Back in those days, we would have a delivery man. The milkman would leave these full up in a little milk box on the side of your door. And after you used it, you would then return it because these things would get returned to the dairy. Now, this shape is odd, but I know exactly what it is because the milk would not be homogenized and it would separate. So you'd have the cream at the top and the milk at the bottom. If you wished, you could shake it up and have rich milk, or pour the cream off and have your own skim milk. So I remember my mom doing that. And there's a little metal device that would be inserted down here so that you could hold the milk back while you poured the cream off. And that's how this was done. So I didn't know that we actually had a dairy here in Lynbrook, or at least a bottling company that handled milk. It's one way or the other, not exactly sure. But I do know, we certainly had farms in Lynbrook. My goodness, we had farms until the 1940s, farms all over the place. Now this bottle has a story. This is from the Lynbrook Bottling Company. Now I know exactly where this bottling company was because I spoke with a descendant of the owner. and it was right opposite Village Hall. So if you stand at the front of Village Hall and look out, there's a big parking lot across the way, and that's where the bottling company was. And there's a story behind this, because the bottling company went into business in 1922, I think it was. Went out of business in 1929. And went out of business for a good reason. Now, I mentioned earlier that these bottles would get returned to the bottling company, washed out with lots of hot water, and then they'd be refilled. These were soda bottles, by the way. The other bottle was milk bottles. So soda would be going to these things. And there was a problem where that bottling company is situated. The gradient of the land runs lower towards Sunrise Highway. And Sunrise Highway was just then being built and paved. It existed for a long time, but being paved. And the commuter lot also was being paved. And so the water that used to simply flow out from the bottling company began to flow onto the street and created what was called Lake Sunrise. The water just would be inches deep across Sunrise Highway. I have an image of that, which we can see. So the bottling company then, under the advice of some brilliant contractor, dug a huge well on the property to handle the overflow of all this water that was being used to wash the bottles. But the drainage was not good. There must have been clay or something underneath, because the water kept running out onto Sunrise Highway. This actually forced the bottling company to close. They no longer could stay in existence. The village fathers forced them to close. So an interesting thing happened with these bottles. The company had literally thousands of bottles. What to do with them? Well, they sold them to a bottling company up in Hartford. And the bottling company, well, it might have been New Haven. It's in Connecticut. And that bottling company, let's say it was the Hartford Bottling Company, became the Lynbrook Bottling Company of Hartford, and used the Lynbrook bottles for many years thereafter. These bottles can be bought on eBay and places like that. These were donated to the Historical Society.